All right, in this short course, I'm going to cover the principles of investigative report writing. I'm going to slide out of the way here, bring the PowerPoint up full screen, and I'm going to talk about some details that you need to go think about when it comes to finishing your summary report. All right, principles of investigative report writing. Now, a criminal investigation is only as good as the report that supports it. Sounds like common sense. But the quality of a report is how effective that report is. And to qualify as effective, the report has to be complete, it has to be clear, concise, and accurate. Now, those are four easy words to say, but I've read a lot of reports over the years where the reports are not complete. They're certainly not clear or concise, and unfortunately, many of them are not even accurate. They leave things out, and it can cause real problems later on during court or even to further investigate. Now, some basic principles of report writing. Number one, write in first person. Okay, I did this and things like that. Write in first person. Use chronological order, not only chronologically from what you did and when you got the call and what you did, but also chronological in how the actual crime or the death or whatever you're investigating took place. Use past tense, okay, because the crime has already occurred. So use the past tense verbiage. Use active voice. Use correct spelling and punctuation. Use correct subject and verb agreement. Use correct pronoun references. Now, avoid jargon and wordiness. And I know in a lot of reports I've read, we use 10 words to describe what 2 words could do just fine. Plus, because we talk in police jargon, we want to put that in our report. Sometimes we want to make it sound fancier, so we use some jargon. Avoid all of that. Write facts rather than opinions. Your opinion has no place in a police report or a criminal investigation report, death report. Choose the correct word to describe the incident, and then organize the report by using opening paragraphs and headings. Now let's talk about note-taking, because you have to be able to take notes to be able to condense those notes to your report later on. Now, the purpose of notes is to record your storage of your information. Now, a lot of times, officers, investigators will keep their notes, and if that's what you do, then keep them all the time. If you destroy your notes after you make your final report, then destroy them all the time. But another thing a note-taking can do is act as building blocks. So as you're progressing through an investigation, your notes will build upon past information that you have received. And then, of course, lastly, it aids in your memory. So when you get ready to write your summary report, you can't remember everything that you did that may have took hours or a couple of days to do. So this will help aid your memory. Now, mechanics of good note-taking. Number one, they have to be readable. They need to be accurate. And they need to be concise, similar to your summary report. But your notes need to be readable, accurate, and concise as well. Now, let's look at an example here. This is notes that an officer took. And this is a street officer, and this isn't a criminal investigation detective, but this is a street officer that responded to a call. Now, let's look at his notes. In his notes, he put 0700 received call, 4:59 now, 123 North Main Street. Okay. His second note was 0710 arrived scene. 0711 RP R Foster, and then has the date of birth, arrived business, 6:45 front door open. Now, that's this officer's notes. He knows what that means. I pretty well know what that means as well. But let's look at some of the sentence structure from those notes. So, on February 6, 2005, I was assigned to Uniform Patrol Unit 1 Alpha 12. At 0700 hours, I received a call of a burglary in progress at 123 North Main Street. So, there's the opening sentence, the opening structure to the report. Now, you have two parts of the opening report. Number one, you have the source of activity. So we just talked about the source of activity. That was that sentence. And then you have the observation section. And this is the observations that you make as an officer, as a detective, as a coroner, as you arrive on the scene. So again, going back to his notes, here's how he finishes his opening of his report. At 0710 hours, I arrived on the scene where I was met by the reporting party, Raymond Foster. Foster told me that he had arrived at his place of business, 123 North Main Street, at 0645 hours and found the front door of the business open. Now, the notes we just read, now those are two sentences that goes to the opening statement of his summary report. So you want to be able to tell a story. Now, this is probably one of the most important parts of report writing. Grammar is important. Being able to get your thoughts out is important. But you have to be able to tell a story. What happened? What did you do? And what happened as far as the crime or the death occurred? It's your responsibility to create a mental picture so your reader knows what happened. So who's your reader? Your supervisor, certainly. Other detectives. Maybe the victim of the case if it's not a death. Maybe family members, attorneys, witnesses, judges. And then think about this. What if your case goes cold? And what if you work in a death case and your case goes cold, and 30 years later, a cold case squad is looking at your report? Now, what I have found a lot of times with reports is someone will write their report because based on what they know. They know what happened. They know what they're trying to say, so they write the report in that manner. But if someone else was to pick it up and read it, it wouldn't make the same sense to them because they don't know what you know because you didn't put it all in their report. So just think about when you write a report, what is somebody going to know 50 years from now when you're not available to explain it? And then, of course, you need to write in first person. To make a report easier to read and to understand, investigators should write in first person. So the writer of the report refers to himself or herself as I. Okay? I arrived, I spoke to, and uses the first person pronouns such as me, my, and mine. All right, so I arrived at the scene, I talked to Sally, I got into my patrol car, I drove to this address. It's writing in first person. I've seen people try to get fancy and write in third person, meaning they're like an out-of-body experience while they're looking at this scene and looking at what the officer did, and writing about an officer, rather than writing from a first person. You have to write from a first person to make it understandable. Now, missing information can be used by defense and others to infer that you are very unprofessional, that you're not thorough, you do not have the expertise that it takes to work the case that you're working, and even to the point that you're not truthful. So you cannot have missing information. And this goes back maybe to opinions. Your job is to report the facts of a case. Your job is not to dictate the investigation based upon your report. So leaving statements out, adding things in the report that maybe shouldn't be there, or maybe changing someone's statement are all misleading information. Also, if you did gather some information where a witness stated that they seen so-and-so do such and such, and you chose to leave that out so-and-so isn't involved, you have actually interfered with that investigation. Because whether so-and-so is guilty of anything or not isn't up to you to decide. Your job is to report the facts as you have found them out only. You cannot leave any information out. Very unprofessional, and again, goes to being non-truthful, which is an issue with your integrity. Now, you want to write in chronological order. And chronological order meaning by time. Your report should tell what happened in the order the events took place. Again, like I said earlier, not only from the time that you got the call and progressed through, but then how the crime occurred after you've gathered all of your evidence and your investigation, then how did that crime occur? That's how you need to report your final summary report in chronological order. Writing in past tense. Everything you write in a report has already happened, all right? Or you wouldn't be there. Very few times are you going to be proactive report writing. It's going to be reactive, which means it's already happened, so it's in the past, okay? In present tense, you would write the suspect lives at 1010 Swanson Court, okay? But a defense attorney is going to ask you, does the suspect still live there? And of course, you're going to say you don't know, because most likely you don't know. The more times you say I don't know to some things, your credibility is going to go down. Now, if you write in past tense, you can say that what is in the report was correct at the time when you wrote it. Okay? So that's why you need to write in past tense. So the suspect lived at that residence, or the suspect worked at that employer, right? Write in past tense, because everything is already in the past. Now, don't use empathetic forms. The word did, for instance, in combination with other action words or verbs, okay? Now, this gets into a lot of grammar, but I want to just point a couple of mistakes out here. This form implies that something else happened, okay? For instance, this is an incorrect statement. I did issue a citation. Okay, the correct would be I issued a citation. It's very simple. Leave all the other stuff out. I issued a citation. Also, the word that, T-H-A-T, in most cases, your sentence will make the same sense, in fact, probably more sense, by leaving out the word that. T-H-A-T is a word that is overused in English writing, okay, and most of the time is not needed. So here's an incorrect statement. Markley did say that Norman had a gun, but later he changed his statement. Well, correctly would be Markley said that Norman had a gun. That's all you need. Markley said that Norman had a gun. Now, spelling and punctuation. Spelling always counts, okay? Because making sure your spelling is right avoids you looking stupid, careless, unprofessional, and uneducated. Now, coming from someone that has a spelling problem, that's a big statement. I do have a spelling problem. I do the best I can, and I use grammar check on my computer and spelling check and things like that. And still sometimes things are missed. And I try to proofread things, and I still sometimes miss it. So if you don't try really to get your spelling down, then you're really going to have a lot of errors. And so if you're somebody like me that does struggle with spelling sometimes, make sure you take the extra effort to make sure it's right. Because again, it just makes you look incompetent. If there's one or two typos in your paragraphs, that's one thing. But if you got a lot, then that can be a real problem. Okay, use active voice. Now, this is important in understanding how active voice works, okay? Now, every sentence has a subject and a verb. We know that. That's what makes a sentence. A subject has to have a subject, has to have a verb, a noun and a verb, okay? So when the subject performs the action, the verb is active voice. So active voice is, I asked the man about the broken mirror. Okay, that's active voice. Now, passive voice gets all wordy, okay? When the action is done to the subject, okay? So passive voice, the fire was reported by the child, okay? The report should be written in active voice whenever possible. Instead of saying the fire was reported by the child, you could say the child reported the fire, okay? That would be active. Make it simple, make it short. Also, using active voice, here's another example, okay? The report was written by Officer Jackson, all right? That's passive. There's 7 words to that. But Officer Jackson wrote the report. Now, that's active voice and only 5 words. You save 2 words per sentence in a 5-paragraph report, you'll save approximately 40 words. So think about how you're writing your sentences, and don't try to get wordy in passive voice to make yourself sound smarter or a better report writer. Officer Jackson wrote the report is all we need to know.